With 7 months in the bag, Sam gets a major opportunity that is quite scary for her, but her fear doesn't perhaps match the anxiety of Carol thinking that she needs to talk her daughter out of this and not knowing how to communicate her own fears to her. The first topic deals with Nathaniel coming up to the Boston area for a Yankees game, and this is what starts everything. If you remember, Nathaniel's the one who Sam beat with that telephone and had that big blow up with, and because of that, she lost a job at Buzz in New York City, and since then, Nathaniel has hopped a few jobs, and with her making amends with him, he seems to try to get back to where they were, where he was just somebody impressed with her work. But one of the problems that Sam currently has is she hasn't written anything recently, and with that, you know, Nathaniel's willing to work with her again, but he needs to see new material, even if it's just material that's old, but he has that hasn't been published. And coming up with that on the fly when Sam was so used to the routine of taking a shot and writing, taking a shot and writing, and to the point she was just drunk and probably passed out, it forces her to try to figure out new ways to tap into her creativity, and doing so poses to be a challenge. In the second topic, we're going to go into how Sam is trying to figure out a new routine for herself as Carol is trying to figure out a way to get Sam to potentially not go to New York City. Now, just to begin with Carol, it isn't 100% clear why she doesn't want Sam to go to New York City. Is it the case of her liking to have this extra money for rent money? Is it possibly that she fears her daughter will relapse again? It's not 100% clear because Carol seems to have some kind of issue expressing herself when it comes to Sam. As shown with Bob, she can express herself in terms of her insecurities with her body and things like that. But with Sam, she decides, you know what, I'll have Olivia handle the situation. Have Olivia tell Sam not to go because it could be triggering or bad for her, whatever. Thing is, Olivia's not going to do that. As she told Sam, she's not her mother, not her friend. She is a sponsor. And when it comes to Olivia, a lot of the time she feels like she's there to guide people and maybe on occasion give a I told you so, but she tries not to go that far. Either way, she outright tells Carol, no, I'm not going to do your job for you, which leaves Carol in this weird position, but perhaps not as weird as Sam trying to figure out a way to possibly write something. Now, she goes to Felicia hoping maybe that she can give her some type of tips, but Felicia's thing with green tea, Hail Marys, the little dance party, whatever, that's not Sam's thing, so no use there. So instead she goes to James hoping that, he could be a bit of a support system for her, but being that he's still in his feelings about Chloe, who has now thus ghosted Sam, he's unable to really be there for her the way she needs him to be because, they're still dealing with boundary issues and where the line can be drawn between the chemistry they have and the friendship that he wants to push since he thinks she's untouchable for a year, even though apparently he wants to touch her before the year is out, but who knows what's going to happen with that. Anyway, while Sam is trying her best to try to write something, even if it's about Gen Z and a bunch of articles that probably aren't worth a damn, she forgets that she has to go to her PO, Gail, in order to get permission to do this. But luckily, Mindy reminds her, and with that, she's able to really get into her head that she's going to go to New York, she's going to have something done, and be far more optimistic than you would probably ever think Sam could be. Though, just to rain on her parade, Britt decides to personally give Sam an invitation to her wedding, even though taking into mind that it's been like a month or so since the last episode, I think, we still haven't really seen Sam get to that point where her and Britt really reconciled. Last I checked, Britt was barely willing or able to talk to Sam after that whole bridal store thing, and I don't know what in Britt's mind makes her think that Sam is now ready to see her former best friend and her ex get together at a place that's going to have a whole bunch of alcohol. In the final topic, Sam is on her way to New York, and she kind of throws a Hail Mary to James in hoping that he'll be on that journey with her. Because, on a side note, James has that sobriety app that he's been avoiding for who knows how long, and his meeting is supposed to be in New York as well, so there's the thought that, they could support each other, and maybe that is the reason why he does show up, beyond them both being Club 24/7 members. Now, is he going to actually do the meeting? Is he just there to support? Is he kind of seen this as a way to get back in when it comes to Sam, make up for what he did when it came to allowing space for Chloe to get in Sam's mind and pants? Who knows? Right now, it just seems like he's trying to be friendly, so for now, we're going to assume that's all he wants to do, even though previews show that those two are going to make out and possibly do more. The first highlight deals with Carol and just wondering what kind of relationship she had with her parents. For what we see in this episode, compared to other ones, with Bob, she was able to express her feelings. You can see in a way with Olivia, she was trying to express her anxiety about Sam going off to New York, but for whatever reason, her and Sam, they just can't communicate like at least a loving mother-daughter relationship, and it kind of makes you wonder why. Is it because Carol didn't have that kind of relationship with her parents where you could have open feelings with one another? Could it be that, Sam and Carol, despite the whole quote-unquote smother label, that they really don't have that relationship where she does smother and really feels some type of connection or bond with Sam? Or is it just because thinking about it, is it that the reason why she tries to smother Sam is because maybe that maternal instinct never really kicked in like she thought it would? So that could be why she tries to be so close to Sam, to try to make this, try to fake it till you make it, I guess you can say. Hard to say, but hopefully in future episodes they may dive a bit more into Carol's psychology so that we can know what's wrong with her. The second highlight, which kind of piggybacks on the first highlight, is wanting to know more about what's going on with James. Right now, it's not really clear what his life is outside of Sam's orbit, or even Club 24/7 if you want to include Mindy. We know that he has 2 roommates that clearly don't take his sobriety seriously, but what about everything else? Did James have the same issues as Sam did when it comes to dating, hence why he's so awkward when it comes to Sam? Could it also be that when it comes to work, was he oftentimes, getting a little bit tipsy or drunk to kind of get the edge off before he did pitches, and that's why with the sobriety app he's a little bit fearful to go to New York and pitch it? There's a lot that's not said in this episode when it comes to both James and also aforementioned Carol, but there is a hope that with us building a reason to get more interested in these characters and what happens beyond what they do in Sam's orbit, maybe we may get some answers in the future. The last highlight is just showing how much of a challenge it can be to be sober beyond just the social setting. Like, for example, we've seen thus far, without alcohol, Sam can have a bit of a trouble socializing. When it comes to dancing, when it comes to going out partying with people, not being inebriated makes it a bit difficult to, let go and just have fun. Yet, in other ways, you can see how people are trying to find their fix even if they're not drinking alcohol. For example, in this episode, when Carol and Olivia are talking, you see Olivia go through like maybe a dozen or so creamers because I guess without getting that, whatever she used to get from alcohol, she now kind of replaces that with sugar. And I would even say you can take that over to Sam in terms of her, writing. Writing is something that can definitely get you in your head a little bit, especially when you're writing something personal or even something academic where you really have to think about who's your audience, what kind of reaction you want, what kind of responses you want, especially if you're working in an online space. And it can really cause you to have writer's block. So what better way to unblock something than, as Sam did when she was in social situations, than drink. But now without that crutch just kind of then need to question, how is she going to figure out what to write about? How is she going to finish the project and even turn in something good? Now, in this episode, she does start to really get to writing when she's on her way to New York with James resting on her shoulder, and it kind of makes you wonder, as we probably said before when it comes to the show, is her addiction to alcohol going to transition to a bit of a love addiction, since it could possibly still give her the same high, possible relaxation feeling, especially through sex, but will also give her the same kind of downfall where she becomes a bit of a hot mess, especially considering if James also kind of gets addicted to her, how big would that blow up be if things just fall apart? In terms of on the fence, there's only one, and that's just feeling that this whole Britt and Sam thing is moving a little bit too fast, if not too much of it is happening off camera. Them going from Sam being unable to really give a real apology to now being invited to Britt's wedding, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, even the fact that Britt is still inviting Carol doesn't make sense, considering Carol's mouth and her question, making her being Britt question her relationship with Joel. That to me is not the kind of energy I would want to bring to my wedding, but to each their own. It could just be a case of we know each other so long that there's a hope that maybe they can get past whatever their issues are. It's, for me, hard to say, but I just wish we got a little bit more detail in terms of how that relationship is healing, since, again, last I remember, Britt did not seem like she really wanted to reconnect with Sam after that whole bridal shopping thing. It was more so a case of Sam trying to give out that olive branch and, Britt acknowledging it but walking away. Overall, I think one of the issues that is starting to appear to me is just a question of, what is this show going to do after one season? Because right now it feels very much like a limited series, I should say, in terms of, okay, Sam is starting to get her life back now, but should we expect her to season finale, something to go wrong, her drink, and then we're back at the beginning for season 2? And if that's the case, is it going to sort of mirror, a part of me wants to say Shameless, in terms of, people coming up on a rise, getting to a really good place, maybe even carrying that over to next season and then bottoming out toward the middle? Because I don't know about you, but I just don't want to see that type of cycle, especially when it comes to Sam and her addiction. I get that it's very much, like most freeform shows, a means of showing what young adults' lives are like outside of romance and all the usual drama we see, but I don't know how long they can really keep that up. And granted, it's not like Freeform is a type of network that goes 6, 7, 8, 9 seasons. At most, this show may get 3 or 4, but I guess overall, I'm just trying to say, I don't see a lot of long-term potential with this show, even though short-term wise, I'm really enjoying it.